Hey everyone, I'm Mark,
And I'm Alex.
and this is Final Stop for Final Fantasy Talks. Well, welcome everyone to our first ever Blitzball episode. Now, we're not exactly sure our vision for this series and what it's going to be, but we are going to sprinkle them in with our regular Final Fantasy X playthrough series, and so it'll probably just be like maybe every 3 or 4 there'll be a Blitzball episode. And our goal for these is just, I don't know, dude. Do we even have a goal? It's just to literally talk about Blitzball.
Yeah, it's just to go over everything Blitzball, pretty much. From
Yeah.
the basics of the basics to, I guess the stats and all of the detailed strategies, all kinds of different stuff.
Yes, and we love all that stuff, and so we like to build different teams and kind of theory craft different things. And so, without further ado, let's kick this off. Now, we wanted to at least take a little bit of time in the beginning here to go a little bit more in depth into kind of the basics of Blitzball. We kind of touch about it in the regular series, and we go over some things, but for this, I don't know, just hone in on it. So first and foremost, man, why would we even want to play this mini game? We say mini game, but this is actually a
Yeah.
massive mini game.
Oh yeah, you can sink many hours into this little side. It's almost basically like a separate game on the
Yeah.
side, you know. It's pretty in depth in and of itself. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things that you can get out of playing Blitzball. There's a whole bunch of things that you can get for the tournaments and the leagues. So, certain things like basically Waka's overdrives, key items, rare items like return spheres, teleport spheres. You can even get, I've seen like underdog secret, elixirs, X potions, all kinds of stuff. Plus, for every tournament or league, there's a top scorer, so you can actually get two prizes.
Yeah, well, especially like so for instance, you'll have the tournament winning prize, and let's just say that's an X potion, but then yeah, top scorers a return sphere. That's unlimited. I mean, you could potentially get all 6 of your players 10 goals if you're possible, and all of them get top score, and all of you get an item every single time. And so some of these items you can get very, very early on. Like for instance, right after Luca, as soon
Mhm.
as you unlock it, you can get return spheres, which, yeah, you may not think is a big deal, but I don't know, if you're doing different challenges and you're doing different things, like it's actually key and like very, I don't know, kind of a big deal, like we're talking very, very early on. And so it's just kind of cool the different things you get. And I don't know, why not? Like you got to give the fans what they want, man. Their lives are pretty pitiful here in Spira. They just got Sin crashing things all the time, people dying, they don't have anything going on. They literally only have Blitzball. That's it.
I mean, as Yuna said it, it's pretty much the only thing that they have to distract themselves from sin, right? But kind of going back to what you were saying about the return spheres, I actually did that on my game, my recent playthrough. And the cool thing, if you can get that early, is later on, like what you can customize and basically you can get first strike, which is really crazy for those return spheres.
And, last and least for what we have down, at least on why you'd want to play this, is I don't know, man. Through all the gripes that we have and just everything going on with it, it is just a really fun side game. I mean, I love it. It's. I don't know. The other fun thing too is just all the different players. I mean, there's 60 players. That's pretty huge right there.
Yeah.
And I just remember we used to love doing fantasy drafts and the Madden games and stuff like this, And so when you kind of get down into the actual stats on these players, it's a very in-depth sports player game. Like all of them have tons
Yeah.
and tons of stats that we'll get into and stuff. And so it's just really kind of fun to
Oh,
pick the
yeah.
players you want and focus in on different levels, or whatever your goal is, and to build that team. And it's just kind of fun going and doing that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, that's the thing, kind of, just since we're going to start from the basics, you can totally change your team, right? Like you can get whatever players you want.
Yeah.
You can basically teach them whatever abilities you want. You can play however you want. A couple other things I was going to add, I think just part of why I love Blitzball so much was playing it in the summer and the fact that it's kind of like an underwater game, right? The
Yeah.
music and everything like that. I just remember, man, I had so much fun with Blitzball back in the day.
Yeah, it has nostalgia value, which, of course, most of our listeners, and you're all right there with us, I believe, for that. Now, unfortunately, with this amazing game comes, I don't know, man. This is like literally by far some of the dumbest AI we have ever seen in a game. Like, it's just really dumb, and it does kind of suck because, I do wish it was a little bit smarter and more challenging because the game is pretty easily manipulative and you can kind of win pretty easily in certain ways, but it's so dumb. The game just always does the same thing. You'll often notice anytime they get the ball from kickoffs, they like to just run right up the middle, and it's like, okay, well, now you just got 3 of us on you instantly. Like, why did you do that? Or they'll take a defender and they'll just swim all the way forward and then get taken out by your defender, and it's like, why would you do that? I mean, it's just like stuff that you would do, but the game just does in a really, really dumb way and basic way, and it just, I don't know, it's easy to kind of trick.
Well, there's that, and then there's also the randomness of it that absolutely drives me crazy. I mean, even
Yes.
till this day, anything random is not good, and Final Fantasy always just, the randomness will always get you. I swear, like the RNG is skewed against you in some hidden way because basically all of their stats, and we'll get into this a little bit later, I guess, in
Sure.
more detail, but like all of their stats when it comes to attack or passing, shoot, any of these stats, there's like basically a 50% swing either on the top end or the low end of that stat. And so, like, for example, if a defender has 10 attack, there's a chance that they could only attack for 5 or they could attack for 15.
Yes.
And I swear that just always seems to, to get me in game, like especially when it's
It
something
never
like
goes your
trying to
way.
score a goal on Nimrook. Yeah, like Nimrook will, basically his 50% is like freaking 30 catch. So it's just
Calm down, man. Don't lose
it
your
is very
cool.
luck
Keep it
based.
together.
Yeah.
No, but it is very
trying.
frustrating. No, I understand completely because we've talked many times over our many different games and playthroughs about the way the game is just, man, it's gotcha. And yeah, the variability sucks because, if you're looking at just raw stats like you are here, you got 10 attack, you got 10 endurance. You would think that attack would, boom, okay, I'm good. I'm going to take him out. I'm going to get the ball. Wrong. Wrong. Sometimes Letty attacks hard and he does like 2. I'm like, dude, you had 8 attack, man. Like, what is going on here? The next 2 dudes will do the same thing. And so, yes, it's a lot of frustration.
Or like for example, what always drives me crazy is you'll have like 2 defenders and one will have 5 catch and then the other one will have like 16 or something. The 16 will just miss completely.
Just couldn't get a hand on it,
like,
or whatever
really?
it says. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So that is the frustrations that you will come across, and that's probably that's the main one, is just you really can't count on the numbers being what they are. You got to kind of just understand that, well, there's a chance it's going to do a little better, a little worse. Rarely ever does it do exactly what it says, and so that just kind of sucks. And from here, I don't know, man, I'd kind of like to go into the positions, right? We got 4 positions, 3 main ones. And of course, I'd like to start out with forwards because that's just the most fun position in my opinion. Another one's shooting, right? That's what Titus is. And so for this, and just kind of stat-wise, obviously shoot and endurance are a priority, right? Endurance is you got to be able to withstand attacks. And shoot is you gotta be able to outscore the catch on the goalie, and so that's good. I mean, other than that, I don't really mind too much personally about pass because I'm typically orienting my players in a way that I'm putting the forward by the goal anyways, right? And then I'm not wanting to then have them also pass. So it is nice to have in certain situations. I'm not too worried about it. But I will say attack and block, man. I love to have some attack and block as well as speed if I can get it.
The one thing I will say on pass, and I find this happens a lot to me, like especially early on, they'll have like 4 or 5 pass or something like that. And at those early stages, it's tricky because if you get into a situation where you're not going to beat, you have the endurance to ward off the defender and you've got to get rid of the ball or whatever. Like with 4 pass, man, you really have to be close and you have to be careful with that. So early on, it's kind of a little bit of a liability unless, like you said, you're going for the goal no matter what. But I mean, that's kind of the downside is like, I guess I would just sum it up as every single position has its strengths and its downsides, obviously. But yeah, like, with the forwards, pretty much it's kind of a pick your poison. Some have good attack and block, but bad pass. Others have good pass.
Yeah. But regardless, when it comes down to it, shoot is what you'd obviously want because you're having them shoot, what you're going for. And there's so many different play styles here. So of course, we are probably gonna harp on some players that you might end up liking, and that's fine. I mean, that's the thing. We're gonna probably say some of our favorite characters are ones that maybe you hated, and it's just very interesting because there's so many different facets and different stat priorities and changes throughout the levels and all that we'll get into a little bit as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
But for forwards, yes. Now centers, I don't know. Honestly, centers is a mixed bag, and I'm actually going to get to my side note I put in there first because growing up with the original just PlayStation 2 version game, I never actually ever used a center like the quote, like actually, like Letty or any of those other centers. I always just, dude, I don't know. I found Shammy because she was there, and we'll talk about Shammy or Shami or whatever. She's great. And then I would like get Volucha because I don't know, I looked at my strategy gun, I'm like, dude, Volucha's awesome. And I got Volucha. And then usually Titus, I put him at the center. And then I just had like 3 people scoring goals all the time, essentially what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you could go the other way and kind of have it more of a third defender if you kind of wanted to.
Right, and exactly. I was just gonna say, when it comes to centers, they are typically like the most balanced, right? But it all really comes down to like however you want to play them. Because some of these centers, like you said, I mean, heck, you could just have a shooting center. I mean, they're usually, close enough to goal to be able to actually get there and things like that. They can be pretty useful.
Yeah.
Or you could have a really good defender, like you said. But I think the main thing, obviously, the higher the pass, the better, because typically speaking, like your center's going to be in the middle of the field. So you want to sort of relay passes between the center and the defenders and the forwards and things like that. Yeah, I really like any center that has good attack and block are also really useful.
Pass, I would agree, probably one of the more important ones. Even if you're not able to break through or something, you still want at least to have a character that doesn't always have to just break through characters all the time. You always have to break through tackles that can actually just sit there and pass over. And so endurance is also pretty important there as well. I mean, of course, endurance is just something that's always nice for most, positions. You would kind of want a nice hearty amount of endurance. But I love block, man. I think just in general, block is a great stat. And so if a center can also get some really good block and decent attack, I'm happy. If they're all around kind of balanced, that's also good too. I've been kind of using centers more that way, but I do tend to prefer centers that are a little bit more defensive leaning than offensive. I feel like, 2 forwards and 2 people shooting is enough. Don't really need 3 attackers or blockers on the other hand, I feel is way more beneficial.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, 3 could be really nice if you get them all top score. Then, of course, like we were saying earlier, you could get 3 return spheres or 3 teleport spheres. I mean, rewards would be pretty sweet for that. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like, honestly, especially end game type of stuff, we'll talk a lot more about this kind of stuff. But I really like to go with, for example, like Nav Guado or somebody like that. He has really good speed. I think he's got like the best block at something like 82. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You know what?
His attack is like 50s.
Let's go ahead and do this. Here's the thing too, guys. We don't really have too much of an agenda for these kind of episodes. I'd like to actually whip out my guide here and take a look at Nav because you're right, man. I agree. We've done this before. I think this is maybe even on our side quest first few episodes we did, and I think we did talk a little bit about Blitzball, but Nav, man, no. I mean, look, starting out, the dude has 16 pass, just starting out, and 14 block. I mean, that's huge.
But his endurance for a while is terrible, man. Like, I've been playing, and once my team was like even all the way up until level 20, almost level 25, he's just so easy to get the ball from. So Avguado's one of the weird ones where he's not very good for a long time until the end of the game when he's one of the best defenders in the game, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you could play him as defender if you wanted to.
Yeah, otherwise you could even put him in defender, and I mean, as a center. No, it is strange, and a lot of stats get this way where like some of them don't grow till the very end, and for instance on endurance at 60 his endurance is 28. I mean, it's like that's very bad. I mean, that's not much, but then just in those last 30 39 levels, he gets up to 65. So it's like in the end,
Yeah,
it's
which
not
is
too
really
bad.
good.
And his attack
Right. That
starts to kind of skyrocket, and other stats do that. But that's I guess the thing is, it's almost impossible to find players that just grow evenly the whole time. Some like
yeah.
will be really strong in the beginning, and then they just trail off for the rest of the whole entire levels. And some peak at middle, but most have like just strange, really strong increases the last 30 levels usually.
Yeah. I mean, it is weird because players that start out, it kind of seems like the trend is that players that start out really good tend not to be that great at the end. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, the ones that are really good, say like levels 1 through 20, aren't really the good ones at the end of the game. And then you've
True.
got like a whole other group that pretty much level 70 on, they start to become like some of the best players in the game.
We're
It's
gonna get
hard
to a
to
lot of
level them
these.
up,
That is a lot of games, and
right?
we're actually going to get up or get to leveling up here in just a second. So one of the last main positions is defenders. These are obviously the bat guys. So attack and block, gotta have it. Which one you want over another? Again, that's kind of your playstyle because you can't really control. A defender will engage, but you can't control if they're going to go for an attack or if they're going to go for a block. It's kind of up to the other player, right? On who they choose to go through, just like you get to choose on your offensive players. So what you choose, I don't know, because it really is up in the air. But I prefer, man, if I got at least attack and block over 50, okay, now we're starting to get towards, I'm okay right now. I'd prefer both over to 60, but that's kind of a tall tale. Not many actually. Not
Yeah.
many get that.
At the end, you're right. You kind of have to choose one or the other, to be honest. I mean, there's quite a few players that are pretty good at both,
Sure.
but generally speaking, like the highest attackers and the highest blockers, it's usually one or the other, and then the other one's kind of average.
Yep.
But aside from that, I mean, my defenders, endurance and pass are pretty important. Obviously, shoot on these guys is just not important at all
Yeah.
because you're
Who
really never
cares?
shooting with them. Same thing with like, other things like catch, I guess, for example. But yeah, endurance is nice. Although they don't need much because usually they're going to be getting engaged with like the forwards of the other team, which, aren't going to have that good of attack.
Yeah, generally most defenders are able to have more endurance than forwards have attack, and so generally can. But every once in a while, you run into players like Bada. Well, it just sucks not having any endurance because you might be able to actually steal the ball, but then their forwards can just come turn around and steal it right back from you, and it's like, oh my gosh, come on, this sucks. And so that's why also pass is kind of because if you don't have to break through, it'd be nice to have pass. So, and then my little addition is I just like speed in general. Speed, it doesn't take much to really kind of get them going. And so obviously defenders, you want them, personally in my opinion, I want them to be able to be a little faster, be able to engage a little bit more often, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just nothing below 50 like those big fatty Ronsos, man. Those guys are way too slow.
Oh, for real. But speed is really important. I mean, you kind of hit on a good note there because especially when you're playing like the Guado or something like that have really
Yeah.
high speed. If you can't get close enough to that player to be able to actually get in the break situation where you can either attack or, hopefully try and steal the ball, it is what it is. So it's like
Yeah.
speed is super useful for getting into those break situations.
Agreed. Yeah, and then the last position is this goalie, and really catch. That's all you need. Just one catch, and then of course just the ability to actually learn the different goalie techniques, in which will, of course, as everything else, we'll get into that later. Yeah, so we'll get into
Yeah.
techniques quite a bit here, but catch all you need for goalies, and that's about it. So that's kind of just the quick breakdown, at least that we have for the positions. And one probably last thing here before we get into some players is just kind of some tips and tricks for leveling up, right? Because we talk about all these different stats, and these players grow from 1 or some start at 2 or 3, but all the way to 99,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of games. And so it's kind of hard to determine what team you want because their stats right now might be really good, but in 10 levels, they might be totally changed or different or terrible. And so that's what you got. But regardless, you're going to want to level up. That's the whole point. You want to level up. You're going to be doing games in order to win. You got to score goals. You're going to be leveling up along the way. And you want to make sure that you're probably over leveled compared to other teams, depending on who you're using. If you're using the Aurochs, absolutely.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
tip, man, is actions, actions, actions. You got to do it, right? If you have nat pass, don't just normal pass. Always do nat pass every single time. You know what I mean? Like, same with shot.
Yeah.
If you have Venom Shot, and that's all you have. Do it every single time with every player.
Yeah, seriously. One of the things that I like to do is try to pass it to your defenders quite a bit
Yeah.
because they're typically the ones that are going to fall behind because they're kind of like out of the action, you know. They're unless they're basically doing a lot of attacks and blocking a lot and things like that. But typically that's not the case, at least for when I'm playing. So your
Yeah.
forwards, generally speaking, as long as you're scoring, you're not going to have an issue with them. And then centers usually are higher level on average because they, you know, being in the middle of the field, they get in more break situations. They're passing the ball, they're shooting, doing stuff like that. And then another one too is goalie's really hard to level if he's not like catching or even, you know, the enemy team's not shooting the ball or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you'll find that if you have very strong forwards, the rest of your players will just get left in the dust. It's like
Pretty much, yeah,
because
they have the ball
again,
the
the
whole
game
time.
doesn't ever do anything with the ball other than just run it right back into you. You know, you'll score a goal, they'll get it, they'll just go right up the middle, and your two forwards in the center will get the ball back. You'll go and you'll score again. I mean, that's just kind of the process for the most part. And so my suggestion for leveling up goalies is to rotate them in. So if you're just kind of scared of getting scored on, at least for the first half, maybe get up a couple, raise the score to a point where you feel confident and you're safe. And then the second half, maybe rotate in that goalie to a defender spot. And like Alex just said, I
Yeah.
mean, you can literally be right next to each other. Just slowly move pass it back and forth between two players. Slowly move them together, and you'll be able to get pass. It's boring,
hmm
it is what it is. But I mean, that's just kind of the game. And if you want them to stay at a competitive level, you're probably gonna have to do that.
Because I mean, especially the better you're doing, like your goalie will not be getting is not even gonna have to do anything for the most part. Your defenders will
Yes,
pretty much take care of everything. So yeah, I actually tried that. I did that. I put my goalie at like, you know, a defender position or something like that.
sure.
And in general, it kind of just seems like if you just pass back and forth a bunch of times, seems like you get about one experience per pass. So
Okay.
it is pretty tough, but generally speaking, like, you know, they need oh, I don't know how
They
much
need a
experience.
decent
Early on, it's
amount.
not much.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's not much, but later on, once you get into the 20s, it starts becoming tedious because they end up needing like 30, 35 experience to level up. So
Yeah, and
typically, you know, all of your players will be getting around 10. And then if you have a forward that got, say, 3 goals or 4 goals, they'll get like 20,
yeah, you'll see the
somewhere
spikes
around
go.
there.
And I mean, ideally, you also want to level up. We're not going to talk too much about techniques for this episode, but you do unlock those slots. So the higher level, you unlock additional slots. You're able to put in more skills. So before we kind of move on to some other things, we got some other topics like basic strategies and the formations. Tech copying, like we kind of mentioned. I would actually kind of like to take a little bit of time, man. We can go through some players if you don't mind. I'd like to talk about good old Titus. Star player of the Xanarkin Aves. Looking at him, all of his stats. Now, here's the thing. We are recording this far in advance of when we're releasing it, so I don't know what it's going to look like by the time. But I do hope to be able to get up and working on some character cards for all the Blitzball players. We're just basically putting the grid and the stats, all their abilities, starting abilities, and all that kind of stuff together. I'd like to be able to have that on the website, or maybe in a drive available for everyone to look at too. So if you guys want to look at the same things, hopefully that will be available at the time that you're hearing this right now, but we'll see. But regardless, for you, man, I don't know. What do you think on Titus? Like starting out, right? So I'm
Yeah.
going to pull up his stats as well.
I
What?
mean, he's pretty solid from early on. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't have a choice, you know, right off the bat, like the
That's
first
true.
game's the championship, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be your best player anyways.
Yeah.
And, you know, we already talked about through the story, we talked about Jack Shot. Obviously, as soon as you can equip Jack Shot, pretty much Titus is almost broken. Like you know, his stats don't jump out at you. They're not anything extraordinary, but Jack
Sure.
Shot alone just makes him one of the best players in the game, if not the best.
Yeah. So starting out, he starts at level 2, and yeah, his stats really aren't that great. I mean, 10 endurance and shoot, that's what you're looking for forwards. That's very par for all forward characters at that, beginning level. But the main other thing with him is just everything else kind of sucks. Like his attack sucks, his
Oh
pass
yeah,
sucks, his block
yeah.
sucks, and so he is just a true forward. Level 10 though, dude, by then, oh man, his stats are growing, and by like 25ish, he's among the best for endurance
Yeah.
and shoot. I think there's only a couple other players that have higher shoot him, but like you said, doesn't really matter because jet shot is just the ace in the hole. I mean, it's the thing that you get to knock out 2 defenders, and it adds 12 shoot to you. I mean, it's just it's a
It's
go-to. Nothing can touch that.
it's just broken. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's such a broken move, right? Can you imagine if the opposing team or something had to, I'd be so pissed with that because it's so cheap.
It
But,
is.
luckily nobody else in the game has this ability, so we get to enjoy it. And,
Yes.
on top of that, he comes with sphere shot too, which is, we'll talk about this more at a later
Yeah.
point, but it's one of these shoots that I think it adds 3 automatically, and then it
Yeah.
kind of like randomly generates numbers. So you can get a shoot that's almost 10 higher than what you have, or 5 higher, but it's pretty darn good.
It is, and to have, and you'll find with pretty much all the other Aurochs, almost none of them have any starting abilities. So he
Yeah,
comes with
exactly.
that, and by the mid level, like 50, he's still very solid, among with shoot and endurance. And then by end game, I mean, his stats actually don't really, you'd be like, oh, it don't max out. His endurance doesn't max out. He's nowhere near towards the top of players. It's at 80, which, I mean, it's not low, but there's multiple players that have it over that and all that. His shoot
Yeah.
is also nothing fantastic. It's 78. And so some people might get too caught up on that, but just keep in mind, a lot of these will boost your shoot on top of possible additional boosts, right? So if you're at max 99, you can't go above 99. It is at that. So if you're at 78, jet shot alone will bring that up to 90. Right, so I
It's
mean
already 90, yeah,
it's
exactly.
up there. It is very competitive. Anything over 70, ideally, is probably more than enough. And then
Yeah.
some other cool things is his speed does continually grow. He ends with 67 speed. Kind of the
Yeah, that's
average for
interesting.
most players is 60. So
I don't remember that actually. It's kind of weird how some players they get a little bit of speed.
it
So
grows really slow.
67 is not too bad. I mean, it's 7 points. Like for example, most of the players you're going to go up against are 60.
Yeah.
So 7 points, not really going to change your life, but in some situations it can be pretty nice.
It can. I mean, and you will if you're running with someone that's at 60, you'll notice a difference. You're gonna start to outrun them
Yeah.
big time. Something cool is he does end with 9,999 health, which in this is like you'll never
Pretty
use
funny.
up that amount of health. It's
Oh
just
no.
you won't even come
Oh.
close because the only
I
health
think even
things health is when you use abilities and attacks and shoots or any
yeah.
action, it just uses that much health. Which 9,999, yeah,
I
right. You're
mean,
not gonna use that much.
yeah, exactly. I think even when he gets Jet Shot 2, that's I think the most expensive ability in the game, and that's 1,000. It's
Yeah,
999. So
use it
with
9 times.
9,900, you're basically you get to a point. I find like around the level 20s or somewhere around there where you just don't even worry about HP anymore. Like
Yeah.
it pretty much you never run out of it, so it doesn't even matter. I mean, level 1, level 2, yeah, there's a chance. I think like for example, when you first get him, and Titus is level 3, you can only use Jack Shot 1 time per half, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
And that's the only time HP really is ever a factor is the super low levels.
exactly.
And especially with like some of the characters and free agents you get that will come with like tier 3 abilities that cost, like 180 health and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm
and you
not going to
can't
be able to
use
use
them.
this. Yeah. And so that's the only time at end game it just kind of is a non-factor. But, if you're looking at competitively, it's like, yeah, he does. It's not a common thing. Not many action players have it maxed out. And so, his health being maxed out is kind of like, okay, cool. Some other good stat,
Yeah,
though, with him is he does actually end up having 49 pass, which is pretty good
that's
among
not bad.
forwards for pass. The only problem is, dude, it doesn't really start to actually increase until like 70 plus, So it's one of those where, it kind of sucks. And then, oh, here you go. You get it at the very end when you've already played like 200 matches.
Yeah, and his attack and block is never good.
Oh, dude.
But the thing about it is, if you put something like Venom Tackle or Wither Tackle on him, at least he can kind of cripple them
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I mean, that's how I like to use him, but pretty much, yeah, his attack is no
It's
good through the whole game.
23. So yeah, I mean that's not good. His block's even worse than 19 at max level, and so
Yeah.
not great. But as far as like a shooter goes, he is like the best kind of purist forward in my, if you're just looking at someone that's going to score goals, that's him. He will score goals. If you try to use him for anything else, well, maybe. Good luck. But
I think the abilities put him over the top, right? Like,
yeah,
his stats alone, there's actually there's a lot better forwards, like you said, out there. But I can't honestly say I've ever replaced Titus on my team just because, again, like the abilities are really just too
yeah.
good.
And it's competitive until the very end. So I mean, if you're not even planning on doing Blitzball long term, short term, well, he'll be just as good as any other forward you're gonna find. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
definitely a good one. All right, and so that is actually where we're gonna pause for this episode. We're gonna keep going. We're just gonna essentially be a continuation. We'll probably even record some of these back to back like that, even though you probably won't hear the next one for a little bit. But we hope that you enjoyed our first Blitzball episode. Probably a little bit slower than it will be. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what to expect, man. But I'm just excited to be talking Blitzball with you, brother.
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, we love seriously this mini game. It just there's so much to talk about with it. It's always fun.
It is. So we'll be back to normal schedule in this next episode, but we thank you for hanging out with us on the first ever Blitzball kind of series here on the podcast. So we appreciate it. I'm Mark,
And I'm Alex.
and this is Final Stop for Final Fantasy Talks.